Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, part number 3 with Beating the Bookie at Beating the Bookie on Twitter. And we got UNLV Colorado State up first. And as we do the intro here, Beating the Bookie, man, you nailed your best bet last week with UNLV, the name your score against Nevada. So hats off to you, buddy, and welcome on in. How you feeling?
Thanks. I'm feeling good. That was one of the easiest bets that I had last week, so it felt good to just nail that one. Like I said, two teams going in opposite directions. UNLV's best team in quite some time, and Nevada's worst in quite some time. So it was an exciting game, and Colorado State game was also exciting too. I mean, I honestly, it was 30-10, and we had Colorado State plus 8.5, I think it was, and I was like, this one's over. I went to bed. I woke up and I see, Colorado State 31-30 against Boise or whatever. And I'm like, how did that? There was only like 3 minutes left. Like they scored 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes and got some onside kicks, I guess. And an amazing comeback, because I don't think they're a very good team either, but great comeback for them. Hats off, to Colorado State last week.
For sure. Actually, guys, we got some Mountain West here to kick us off as we're going Colorado State, UNLV, down to Texas and Houston. Rotation numbers 375, 376, down to 393, 394. If you're new to Every Game on the Board podcast, we go through every single game on the board. This is part 3 of a 4-part series for Week 8 college football. We got at Beating the Bookie on Twitter with the first game up here, 7 o'clock Eastern. Colorado State and UNLV. We're seeing the Running Rebels minus 8-point home favorites, 62 being the total. Bob, are you going back to the well with your Rebels here?
I do like UNLV here, but I think for me, I think Colorado State has like a weakness on defense, so I might play the UNLV team total over. But I certainly wouldn't feel bad playing the UNLV minus the points. I mean, I think it's going to be hard for Colorado State to come off that, they're coming off a huge victory last week, right? Unexpected comeback from behind. They're at the highest of high, right? And now they travel to Vegas to face UNLV. So they'll be coming down a little bit. And I think UNLV is better than Boise. So I do like UNLV in this spot. I think they're a well-coached team. Their offense is, very good. And their defense does just enough. Colorado State, I mean, they're averaging 31 a game, but they're giving up 35 a game. So their defense is, not very good, and I think UNLV will take advantage of that. Just hard to see Colorado State stringing together back-to-back super performances. So I do think UNLV covers this one.
Sure, at home, and Colorado State heading into Vegas here. They are catching 8. We also got Nevada up next versus San Diego State, another Mountain West here, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock local time. We're seeing 48 being the total, minus 13 in the hook. That's the Aztecs at home. So is it fade city here on Nevada, or what are you thinking in this near 2 touchdown spread?
I think for me, Nevada is one of the worst teams in the country, right? They score 17 a game. They're 128th in offense, scoring offense, and they give up 40 a game. So they're 132nd in scoring defense. And, San Diego State, their offense is a little better this year than usual. They throw the ball a little more this year than usual. But, usually we're, used to that San Diego State defense that shuts teams down. But this year they're 107th in scoring league, giving up 31 a game. But I did watch their second half last week against Hawaii. I liked how they moved the ball. I liked how they played. And I just think they're much better than Nevada. I think Nevada just doesn't have a lot of talent. And it's tough for them to stay in games. So I would definitely lean for the Aztecs in this one.
All right, man. We're going from Mountain West to the Pac-12 for the next 4 games here. UCLA and Stanford up next, 53 being the total. We're seeing the Bruins heavy favorites here, minus 17 as on the road at the Farm.
UCLA, I mean, they've had a solid year with that freshman quarterback Dante Moore, but I don't think he's taken I don't think he's really gotten better as the season has gone on. right? He's made a lot of mistakes, and I've even heard talk about Chip Kelly should maybe play another quarterback. Stanford, on the other hand, like I'm throwing out everything. Like usually, I'm not going to throw out what a team did in the first few games,
Right.
but I'm pretty much throwing out everything Stanford did in the first 4 games of the season, right? Just tossing that out. And I think last week, in the second half against Colorado, they found something. I mean, that receiver had 300 yards receiving in the second half, and the quarterback, he really was, gaining a lot of confidence through like 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns in the second half when they came back down 4 touchdowns to beat Colorado. So I think Stanford found something right then, and UCLA has been struggling to score, so laying 17 is not something I'm trying to do. So I think Stanford, they're not a great team, but I think they found something on offense, and now they're rolling. So I would definitely lean towards taking the points 17 with Stanford at home.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, UCLA has been turning the ball over a bunch. We got big one up next here. Talk about an interesting handicap being the bookie. Utah and USC. We're seeing the Trojans -7-point home favorites, 53 being the total. Of course, the Trojans off of that tough loss. Utah, good defense. Interested in your thoughts here in the Coliseum.
I wouldn't even say the Trojans had a tough loss. They just got destroyed, right? Like
Yeah.
their defense actually played pretty well. I think their defense gave up under 300 yards of total defense. And if you would have told me that before the game, I would have said, okay, then USC, they found their defense and they probably cruised over a win against Notre Dame. But offensively, they got crushed. Notre Dame's defense crushed Caleb Williams. We saw Notre Dame end USC's national championship hopes, playoff hopes, and Heisman hopes in one game, right? Caleb Williams looked terrible. Three picks in the first half. They just looked like they were a step behind. They looked a bit slow, and Notre Dame was flying around. And Utah, they're 5-1 right now with the quarterback who's been out the entire season. They had started the third string for a bunch of the games, and now they came back to the kid who started against Grayson something. He started the first game against Florida. He has a bigger arm, and I think he runs the offense a lot better. They started him last game. They scored like 38 against Cal. They looked pretty good at home. I did hit the first half under in that game, but they did find something in their second half on offense. And, I think they keep that rolling. And the USC defense, they performed well last weekend, but can they put that together back to back? And now they know basically like every USC player knows their season's essentially like they're not going to make the playoffs, right? Because they got embarrassed on national TV. And they're clearly they're not in the top 2 in the Pac-12, right? They're not better than Washington or Oregon. Are they even third at this point? So, I mean, they could not even be the third, best team in the Pac-12. And with getting 7 points, I think, I think Utah's better coached, Kyle Whittingham, and Utah protects the ball more. And I think, Utah found something last week. So, Utah's defense is 5th in the country. They only give up 12 a game. USC's defense is 100th. They give up 30 a game. They do score 47 a game for 2nd in the country, but I think this Utah defense is tough, and I think they'll have success this week. So I do like, I do like Utah because I think they found something offensively last week. It gives them some momentum, and I think now they're not dealing with that stuff like what's the quarterback's name with the mullet? Cam Rising.
Cam Rising, yeah.
I think they've pretty much given up on him playing right this season, right? And there's no more like, oh, he might play this week, he might not. He might play, he might not. So I just think that they've given up on that, and I think that Utah +7. I think they got the better coach, the better offense. So better coach, better defense, and they just know USC very well. And I think Utah. I like the +7. I think Utah could win because this is a letdown spot for USC. They're, like I said, they blew the game of their season last week, and where do they go from here? So we'll see how USC responds. But judging from Lincoln Riley's past, I'll take Utah in this spot.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it last week. Cam Rising, like I almost feel like Whittingham was using that as like a coaching advantage the whole
Yeah,
season, so the defense would have to prepare for kind of both quarterbacks.
pretty
I'm
much.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised more coaches don't do that, to tell you the truth. Like, just always keep it a question.
Yeah.
Um, but I agree with you. A lot of people would say like Lincoln Riley, all the offensive explosion. I would take Kyle Whittingham and what he's been
Any
able to do
day.
there at Utah. Yeah.
If you book Kyle Whittingham at USC with all this talent, like he's gonna win games, right? Like Lincoln Riley saw what cost USC the chance at the playoffs last year. That was the defense, right? So naturally, you would say like, "Hey, let's go out and we'll sign some guys with NIL deals. We'll get some transfers in the portal. We'll toughen up that defense." Like a lot of colleges did. They brought in a lot of guys from the portal, but he was just like, I don't need to do anything, right? We don't need to get better. We're just going to score more points than you anyways, so whatever." But what happens when your offense has a bad day? You lose the game, and it's like he refuses to adapt. This is what cost him games in Oklahoma, right? They would have terrible defense there and just try to outscore the other team, and it just doesn't work. You got to have some defense, and Lincoln Riley has no clue on how to coach defense, and he just doesn't get it, right? And Kyle Whittingham, it's like Kyle Whittingham makes the most of what he has, right? It's
Hmm.
tough to get like 5-star recruits going to Utah, right? Like it's tough. But he gets guys that just, they're tough players. They play tough. And I think he's just a much better coach. So I definitely would back Utah on this spot.
Sure. Chide picks in the house saying the GOAT for sure. As we got about 5 more games here, guys, for the segment. And I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors. BetOnline.ag. The game starts here. Guys, check them out, betonline.ag. And we got Viva Tequila Seltzer, vivatequilaseltzer.com. That's where you can check them out. 4.5% ABV, zero sugar as well. Hashtag Viva Vibes, vivatequilaseltzer.com. We got Arizona State and Washington up next as we're staying in the Conference of Champions. This one a nightcap here, beating the bookie. 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 local time, 60 being the total. Washington off of arguably the biggest win of the season here, minus 26.5 at BetOnline right now. Big number. Is this a letdown spot? What are you thinking here?
I'm not really sure it's a letdown spot because I think they play Stanford next weekend. And, like, what do you have to what are you letting down for the big game next weekend? So I think Washington sees that like whatever they want is in front of them, right? They're clearly a playoff team. If they win the rest of the games the entire way, they're going to win they're going to make the playoffs. And Michael Penix, he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. He's minus 120 to win the trophy, so he's a heavy favorite at this point. Arizona State, they're not going to a bowl game this year because they self probation. Their quarterback play has been terrible. They just have not looked good. The first year coach has been struggling. But that's a lot of points to lay, like 4 touchdowns. I mean, Washington can easily be up 28 at the end of the game and just let Arizona State go down and score on the prevent defense. So probably stay away from this. A lot of these games, I like to take either the first half or the team total. Just take like Washington's team total over.
Okay.
Because I still think Washington's going to score a lot. I think they're going to try to, you got a guy who's the Heisman favorite. You're going to try to pump up his stats a little bit, right? So I would probably take Washington team total in this spot.
And beating the bookie, is that something you do a lot of? Like, what would you say the percent of your bets is on like side and total compared to like team total?
I just like team total. I mean, sometimes I like team total more if the team they're playing is just trash, and like you don't want to have to count on the other team scoring, right? So,
Okay.
And sometimes the team total is a lot easier to hit sometimes than the game total. I mean, for example, last week I liked the Wyoming team total over 13.5 against Air Force. I mean, it hit first quarter, right? So I like team totals because sometimes you can win those early and not have to worry about the rest of the game, right? Like you don't have to sweat the rest of the way. So it's like in baseball, if a team hits their team total in the third inning, you don't have to worry about the other team scoring any runs to add to it. But I just think in this spot, I think Washington, they're going to score points, but I don't know how much focus, their defense coming off a very good game last week against Oregon. I don't know how focused their defense is going to be. I think it's easier for Washington to play play good offense than play good defense. So I just think it's easier for them to score points than to stop the other team. So rather than worry about the spread, I would just play the team total in this game.
Sure. Yeah, I guess stick to the strength, if you will, of each team. I get it, man. We got a couple games left here, guys. 3:30 Eastern, 385, 386. Washington State at Oregon. Speaking of big games, Oregon on the other side of that, but they're still laying near 3 touchdowns. Minus 20-point home favorites, 62 being the total. Washington State started off hot, man, and for whatever reason, they've ran into a little bit of a speed bump here. But 20 points, what are you thinking?
I'd say a lot more than a speed bump. I mean, they blew the game against UCLA a couple of weeks ago. Then last week they played Arizona, who's is all right. They're nothing special, but they just destroyed Washington State at Washington State. And Cameron Ward, their quarterback, I thought he was very good up to 2 weeks ago. He's had probably his worst 2 games the last 2 weeks. I thought last week would be like a get back spot for Washington State, but they just came out flat again. I think at this point they know pretty much any chance of they had of going to maybe a Rose Bowl or something is gone. And Oregon played very well last week. I mean, they should have won the game against Washington, right? I mean, they were right there. They have a tough defense. That's questionable coaching decisions last week, but I can easily see Oregon boat racing Washington State, to be honest, because Oregon still knows they're playing for something, right? They can still make the playoffs at 11-1, whereas Washington State, I mean, their season's pretty much over, and Ward's coming off his 2 worst games of the year. Meanwhile, Bo Nix played great last week, right? It was nothing Bo Nix did to lose the game last week, right? Like Oregon, I don't really feel like Oregon made a mistake to lose last week. I think it was more of a coaching decisions cost them the game. So I think Oregon, if they want, they could boat race Washington State this week, but the 20 is a little high for me to take. So I might look into like that first half spread. Maybe it's like minus 11.5 or something like that. I might look into that, but the 20, I'm not just dying to lay that. I definitely wouldn't touch the over because Washington State's offense has been terrible the last few weeks. So I'm trying to look at Oregon first half.
We got 387, 388 up next, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 Pacific. Utah State and San Jose State, guys. We are seeing SJSU minus 4-point home favorites, 66.5 being the total. Mountain West action in San Jose, California, beating the bookie.
I'm not going to lie. I probably won't watch this one unless it's at midnight. But Utah, I think San Jose State, we expected more from them this season. This is probably their worst year in the last few years. I mean, they've been bowl eligible the last few years. And Utah State, they're all over the place. They're a hard team to gauge. They went to UConn. They beat UConn. They're very hard to gauge, and neither of these teams really excite me at all. I really have. This is one of those games where you'd almost rather watch WNBA than this game. So I probably stay away from this game. But that I'm definitely not laying 4 with San Jose State in this spot.
Fair enough, my man. As we got UCF and Oklahoma up next. This one kicks us off on Saturday. 66.5 is what BetOnline is hanging right now. Minus 17.5. That's the Sooners at home. We've seen actually some UCF money. Was as high as 20. I don't know if I can jump in on the Knights here, man. You like it? Anything? Big 12?
No, UCF wanted for years to be in a real conference. They wanted to be in the Big 3 for years in Florida. They wanted to be, part of the Miami, Florida State discussion. So they joined the Big 10 or the Big 12.
Yeah, Big 12, yeah.
And they lose. They just get destroyed for their first 3 conference games, right? And Kansas was destroying them last week. They kind of let up at the end, but that game was over early. And they've just looked terrible to start conference season. Oklahoma, they're coming off that big win against Texas, and Dylan Gabriel going up against his former team, right?
Sure.
I don't think there's any really bad feelings there, but he's one of the Heisman favorites as well. Gus Malzahn, I'm sure you know him very well. He's been struggling, to say the least this year. He blew a 35 to 7 lead against Baylor in like the fourth quarter to lose this year, and they signed him to an extension the next day, and he gets destroyed again the next week. So I just don't think UCF's very good this year. But that's a lot of points to lay. But I think the Oklahoma defense is very good this year, and if I had to pick a side, I would definitely roll with Oklahoma because I just haven't seen anything from UCF that makes me want to bet them.
Little Boomer Sooner action here, guys. We got 2 games left in part number 3. We got part number 4 coming up next with Gabe Morency to finish off the Every Game on the Board podcast for week number 8 here, brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here, betonline.ag, and Viva Tequila Seltzer, vivatequilaseltzer.com. You get it shipped to your house, guys. Really good. 4 different flavors. My favorite drink, 4.5% ABV. 0 sugar, helps with the hangover. So we got 2 games left, that being 391, 392, Coastal Carolina and Arkansas State. We're seeing the Chanticleers minus 10-point road favorites, 59.5 being the total. So we get Coastal Carolina and Arkansas State. What are we thinking in Jonesboro, Arkansas?
I thought Coastal Carolina would be a lot better this year with Grayson McCall coming back. I was surprised he didn't transfer to another school, actually, but he's been loyal to Coastal the last couple of years, so I give him credit for that. Arkansas State, Butch Jones, that's all I really need to say. They've played 3 decent teams this year. I think they've lost those games 70-0, 37-3, and 37-3. So the 3 best teams they've played, they've just gotten destroyed like 143 to 6, right? So they're not a very good team. Coastal, they upset Appalachian State last week. They're looking better, and just Butch Jones. I think Butch Jones has pretty much destroyed this program. Arkansas State used to be somewhat formidable. They play pretty well. They used to score a lot of points, and that's just totally dead. It's a totally dead program under Butch Jones, and if I had to, I would take Coastal.
All right, guys, last game here. We'll get a best bet from Beating the Bookie. 393-394, Texas and Houston, 4 o'clock Eastern here, 61 being the total, minus 23.5. That's the Longhorns as the road team in Houston, although I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of Longhorn fans there. What are you thinking in this Texas battle?
Yeah, Houston's coming off a big win against last week they had that Hail Mary win at the at the buzzer against West Virginia. Pretty exciting game right there. And Texas, they're coming off a loss in the Red River Shootout. They're basically they have outside playoff chances right now, right? They have to win the conference, but it's obviously a tall task. Quinn Ewers, Heisman gone, Sark. Not really too confident in him, to be honest. And they're coming off of a bye week, off a loss. I'm sure that they've been thinking about the Oklahoma game for, the last 2 weeks. Then laying 23 in Houston, I'm sure it'll be a lot of Texas fans there. But that's a lot of points to lay, especially against a school who can score points, right? I could easily see Houston scoring, 24 points, right? And not even having to play well to do that. So it's tough to, can I see Texas scoring 49, right, to cover? That's tough, right? And it's tough. What's Texas' incentive to cover this game, right? Coming off a loss and stuff. So if I had to play, I would probably take the points with Houston. But, I'd probably, it's a tough game. And this is a really tough game because you don't know where their head is at, right? So if I had to, I'd take the points. I wish it got to 24. and I feel a lot better with Houston. But this game I'll probably have to pass. It'll be interesting to see how Texas responds coming off that loss to Oklahoma, though. So I probably would pass in this one.
All right, fair enough. As we'll get a best bet here. Every game on the board. We got every game on the board. If you're new to it, we go down every single game on the board. YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcasts at, as well. Every game on the board, and on Twitter at Beating the Bookie, at Drew Martin Bets. Feel free to chime in below in the comments. Any questions you have, we can answer them on next week's show as well, guys. So feel free to fire away. Beating the Bookie, want to throw it back over to you, man. Any final thoughts you want to throw out there? And do you have a best bet for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to that Penn State Ohio State game this weekend. Something's either Ohio State's going to win a big game or James Franklin's going to win a big game. James Franklin, he's like 1-11 against top 5 teams. He's 0-9 on the road against top 10 teams. So what's going to change? Ohio State's offense has been looking better by the week. They're going to be fully healthy this week. So I think my best bet would probably be Penn State over 46, because I think that total is just way too low.
Okay, over 40. We could actually give you 45.5 at Bet Online.
I'll take 50. I mean, it's still going to win. So.
Okay. So Penn State, Ohio State over 45.5. What do you like anything sidewise? Because like you said, there's a lot of trends. James Franklin against top 10, but also they're on a 13-0 against the spread run in the regular season. I don't think nobody's talking about that. The money machine that they've been printing.
I mean, I would take, if I had to take a side, I would take Ohio. I hate Ohio State. I mean, I'm not an Ohio State fan at all. Growing up a Hurricanes fan, I would take Ohio State though, because I'm not. It's hard to back James Franklin when he's never won it. Like, prove it to me. Like, prove to me you can win a big game before I back you, right? Like, he hasn't proven he can win a big road game, so he's tough to back. And I think at the end of the day, all the playmakers that Ohio State has on offense, Harrison Jr., the other dude at receiver, their running back, I just think they're all coming back this week, and I think their offense has been getting better by the week. And Ohio State's been tested, right? They played at Notre Dame. They faced adversity, right? They came from behind against Notre Dame, last-second touchdown drive. As the clock expired, they were down double digits to Maryland. They came back to win. So they've faced adversity, and they've overcome it this year, whereas Penn State hasn't played anybody. They've played nobody. Iowa's their best game. Iowa can't even score a touchdown, right? So I think Ohio State's proven much more this season. I'm just like, it's hard to back Penn State when they haven't played anybody, so I would definitely lean with Ohio State.
Interesting strength of schedule. You're right. I haven't bet this game, but I was leaning Penn State. You got me thinking about it now, though, man. And one thing I gotta just bounce off of you. You brought up you hate Ohio State, a Miami fan. I'm guessing 2002, that late pass interference call. Oh man.
Yeah, after they the Hurricanes already dumped Gatorade on their head coach calling pass interference. So
that was a tough one to take as a Canes fan. I'm sure.
When you have a Heisman finalist blow his ACL out in like the first quarter, you're going to be in trouble, right? So Willis McGahee's injury cost them that game.
That was the Willis McGahee injury, that national championship. Oh man.
So, and they had Jarrett Payton. I mean, Jarrett Payton, the backup, came in, and the craziest part about that game is, they brought Jarrett Payton, who was all right. But on the bench, they had Frank Gore, who was averaging 10 yards a carry that year. And they didn't want to, if they had played him in another game, he would have lost his red shirt. So they didn't put him in the game. And, Frank Gore, so I think that cost them the game. But, it is what it is. So it's been 22 years, 21 years. So I'm over it now. I mean, I don't really hate Ohio State. I mean, especially these days, because whoever I bet on really, I'll cheer for. But I do think I think Ohio State players, they've been in a big moment before. They've got guys who have played in these big games. And I just don't think, like Penn State with their quarterback, I don't think they've played in these big games yet. And Franklin hasn't proven he can coach in these big games. So I would definitely, if you had to ask me who I would rather win, I'd rather probably see Penn State win, right? But I don't think that they're going to win. So I could be wrong, but I'm just saying, they got to prove it to me first before I back them. So
Okay, but you would definitely be rooting for the over 45.5, guys. Best bet for the segment, right? Beating the bookie.
yep, for sure.
All right, man. Well, thanks for the time. As always, great stuff breaking down the games. Guys, go check out vivatequilaseltzer.com, betonline.ag. The game starts here, and that does it for part number 3. We'll be back for part number 4 in about 15 minutes with Gabe Morency to finish off the Week 8 card. Go check out Beatin' the Bookie at Beatin' the Bookie on Twitter. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Smash that like button, comment below, guys. Cash those tickets.